Look for that one. It's 2 o'clock. Okay, it's 2 o'clock. We'll call this workshop of the Board of Supervisors of the Gateway Services Community Development District to order. It is 2 o'clock. Again, this is a workshop, and so there won't be any public comment during that period. Purpose of this meeting is totally to discuss the assessment methodology, and here to make the presentation is Russ Wire. Oh, and want a motion allowing Flavia on by Zoom to the meeting. So moved. Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okie doke. Russ, it's yours.
There, can you hear me okay?
Does that work?
Is that good? For the record, Russ Wire, Real Estate Econometrics. I was asking the audience to take my jacket off, which I did, so I don't look so intimidating. And rolled up my sleeves a little bit, so we can get to work. As you know, because of the repealing of Rule 6, we need to revisit the assessment methodologies that we created about 4 years or so ago. And in this time, we are going to work through a collaboration of everybody in putting this together. So everybody knows, and I will go through the schedule near the end of it. We're setting up workshops when we go through individual pieces all the way through December. Yep. So, but the first one is kind of the 30,000 foot level to understand. Yeah, I'm not ready for that one yet, but that's okay. I will get there. Part of the assignment, let me go through those pieces. You all did get that in your agenda package.
Yeah, we've got everything.
The assignment, the agenda, what we're going to be doing. Remember, it's to create a new operations and maintenance methodology, and as most of you know, the other one was very robust. This one will be robust as well. It's huge. We have 7,500 parcels that we have to analyze when we go through this this exercise. So what I want to do today is talk about what we're going to do, what are the pieces of it. We will have some questions and some questions back and forth that we will need to talk about. But the first part is, in terms of this, I will be reviewing the budget. We have the budgets and we have a bunch of questions on that we will need to talk about because we have General Fund 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 to talk about. 1 and 2 in particular because 1 was Gateway and 2 was Pelican Preserve. At that point, we will talk about that today. This whole process, we will be reviewing all the parcels that are within the district. It's our opportunity to go back and review it. Now, we did review it each year if there were some changes in terms of parcels, in terms of their uses. Sometimes parcels were blank parcels that became development, which changes the measurements and all of that stuff. But in this case, we're going to go through parcel by parcel again, like we did in the beginning. We will have that all set up. The next part of that will be determining the assessment for each property in the district. We will simplify the assessment determination workbook. Right now, I said the workbook is very complex right now. We have a number of worksheets within that workbook. They're all interconnected. We need to simplify that, and which will make it much easier to utilize. And the second part of that, we will include the assessment role at the back end. So ultimately, what we will be able to do in setting this up is plug in the budget numbers, the assessments will roll out, and the assessment role will be ready to deliver to the property appraiser. And it'll all be ready for you when you're going through your budget process. So you'll know immediately what we can sit there actually when you're doing your budget analysis of what happens if this changes. We can plug it in and you'll see what the assessments will do. So ultimately, that's where we're driving towards. Now remember, there's the methodology is twofold. The first part is the budget. We do the budget analysis, and the reason we do the budget analysis, as you know, there's administration, there's roadways, there's water management. We have Parks and Rec, which we're going to look at separately. We determine all of those, and what I call them is budget silos. The reason we do that is because there's different measurements for the different silos. In the past, what we did for administration, it was, everybody received a 1 for that. Everybody spread that benefit was equal among administration. The roadways was based on trip generation. The water management was based on pervious and impervious surfaces. And so we will be reviewing that part. First of all, get the budget into the right silos. And then the second part will be the benefit determination. And that is where we will be discussing, as the board, we'll be discussing the measurements that we're using to see if there's any alternatives to do it. I mean, it's pretty solid what we use now with trip generation and water and the water management stuff. But we will be discussing those. And we have workshops set up going forward. One will talk about water management. Another one we will talk about roadways. Another one we will talk about Parks and Rec and administration. So we will have time to discuss how we're going to do this. Again, it's a collaborative effort. And now then we will do, again, the benefit determination at that point. And this will all go up until January. And again, I will go over the calendar when I get near the end of it. Now, you can put up the budgets. What I wanted to do was go through each of the budgets and show you how we have separated them in the past and put them into the silos. And you all can see this, it's on the screen for you. For instance, in this case, you can go past the revenues. Just start on the cost because we're determining the benefits from the cost. And this is the administrative part, right? Yep. Where we're at.
So you're using 2024, not 2025's data.
Correct. It doesn't really matter in terms of data. It's just, I'm just trying to show what we determined and where we put them into the silos so you get an idea. The only difference is I did take a look and I separated the Parks and Rec this time so we can take a look at that and gives you an idea of what line items go into each of the silos. And that's where we do the budget determination portion of it. Take that budget, for instance, administrative services, supervisor fees, your payroll expenses, all of those fall over onto the administrative side. As you can see, the far right, what I call the far right silo. You keep going down to the next set. Go up a little second. There you go. So that's the operational administrative services, and it's a little harder for me to read. Hard to just here. That's good. There you go.
Yeah, can you get rid of the
I can't even with my
headers?
glasses. I can't get them.
So the whole sheet's on the page?
So your operational expenses is payroll, salaries,
That's better.
retirement benefits, health and life insurance. All of that is all administrative costs. So that basically is shared equally among all of the properties within the district. That's ultimate, or this is under General Fund 1. That was under the Gateway originally. Keep going down. Next one, again, is still a continuation of it. Telephones, cell phones, building utilities, everything that has to do with the operations and administrative part of the district all fall under administrative costs. Keep going down, pretty straightforward. Now landscape services. And what we've done, and I've done this in a lot of my districts, almost all of them actually, the landscaping that is taken care of by the district for the most part is along the roads. So the benefit determination, that gets lumped into the roadway category. And it's based on, again, it's based on trips. So if you're a single family home and it's higher trip generation than a multifamily home, you have more trips on the road, therefore you have the benefit of the landscaping portion of it, the aesthetics of it. So that's the main reason for lumping it in with the roadways. When we get to roadways, we can talk about that in the future one. Again, this is the 30,000 foot level. Wanted you to understand where we were coming from when we did the original one. Whoops, must be 2 o'clock. Oh, 2:09, sorry. So you can see what the landscape services are. It's the payrolls, it's the workers' comp, all of those other things, the irrigation repair, tree trimming, fertilizing, plant replacement, all of those things are involved in landscape services. Go down a little further. Now water management. This again is another silo. As you can see, it's the second silo in, and this is where we measure based on pervious and impervious surfaces. And most of you, I think we've been through it before, understanding what a pervious surface is and what an impervious surface is. The impervious surfaces are generally the footprint of the building or whatever is on a site. And then and that would be driveways, that would be parking lots, all of that. That's impervious, and that's flowing into the water management system. Then we have the pervious surfaces, which is the grass areas, which percolates. And in that case, that still has a flow. It's not 100% like the impervious surfaces, but generally it falls around 20% of the vacant pervious surfaces flow into the water management system. And that's been tried and true by I have engineering studies that back all of that up. So that's how we measure all of that. You can see what goes into there. Again, payroll for your water management, that gets allocated based on what you guys figure out in terms of, when I get the budget, that's where the payroll comes from, administrative people, all of that. Workers' comp again, insurance, here we have lake maintenance is in there, fountain maintenance is in there. We have an biannual lake bank inspection, the conveyance systems, they always need to be cleaned as well. You can keep going down. The wetlands are involved in that. Stormwater system repair and maintenance, stormwater, pipes, all of that all needs to be maintained. So that all falls under the water management system. Littoral shelves in the lakes, we have littoral shelves, which are required. So you'll have that maintenance, and you can continue on down with that. Next, I put in the Parks and Rec, and I want people to understand I've created that third silo. I haven't done any measurement, none of that. This is just purely for budget, because I want all of you to understand what not what but what is included in the Parks and Rec budget. So you have payroll and all of those good things, utility services, contractual services for landscaping, maintenance of the soccer complex. You can see, keep going down a little bit. You got the soccer, what's on there? Soccer, what is that called? Signage. Oh, there it is. And the dog park is in there. There's sod replacement. There was some sod installation. So you'll all understand that's what we will have when we do the budget next time, and whatever the budget numbers come out to be for those, they will be measured under what we eventually will determine what the Parks and Rec measurement will be.
Russ,
Yes.
that Parks and Rec component under the current, what we're operating under, was not a standalone, correct?
Correct. It was under administration
Okay,
originally.
thank you.
But we are separating that.
Yes.
For particular measurement. Continue on down under the parks. Whoop, went a bit up.
That was just the rest of the Parks and Rec stuff.
Oh, the rest of the park. Okay, the swimming pool is included in that. All of the costs that are required under the swimming pool and for the Parks and Rec, you can continue to go on down. And then special events was included. Actually, under special events, it wasn't included in Parks and Rec. I included that in administration.
Yeah, under admin.
Is it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Say it again.
It's all moved under Parks and Rec for fiscal 25, since Carrie and her team are overseeing all of it. We moved it under Parks and Rec.
I think we should
Okay.
probably look at
Yeah,
just a title classification. So we should probably have Parks and Recs and programs, just so it has a logical progression into, because it's really not Parks and Recs, but if we include programs in the naming convention, then it
Good
makes
point.
sense.
And if we do have the flexibility to segregate by lines, it's not just because it says Parks and Rec, it's not going to
Oh, sure,
automatically go
yeah.
under Parks and Rec. Each line has to be designated somewhere. So like if we decide that we want to have those things be admin, they would be admin.
Yeah, we could go either way.
Right.
Yeah, and ultimately, when we get to that, when we have our workshop on that, we can make that decision on where we want to go. That's really a board decision.
And remember, at the workshop, Chelsea did say that Carrie's responsibility is also to drive programs within the community, so that lines up.
That was why we moved it under Parks and Rec for fiscal 25.
Okay, but that, again, this is why we're holding these workshops, so
Sure.
we can understand the different line items and elements to that. I just had it under administration, it can go wherever when we ultimately decide.
But we also discussed the possibility of a public works, having a delineation of public works, to where you could take certain items that would be applicable to that would not fall into one of those others. That would be a universal maybe benefit to everybody.
That, if it's going to be universal.
Landscaping would be a big one. That would be a big one.
And again, that's going to be a board determination. When
Yeah.
we get to that workshop, we will discuss it. What are the pros and cons of
Yeah.
doing that? And again, if you're going to do that, if you have a public works, I mean, we can it would be measured basically, to me, if it's universal, it's going to be the same as administration,
That's right.
so it could fall under administration.
Yeah, if you're going to do it on an ERU basis or EAU basis, and they're both on an EAU basis, what have you accomplished?
Exactly.
Getting that.
Yeah, we're just trying to, for budget purposes, you will all be looking at the one line item, but you'll see why it's categorizing, like you said, for measuring it,
Yeah.
which makes a world of sense. Street lighting coming up. Can you slide that up a little bit, please? Street lighting, again, street lighting's along the road, so we're using will ultimately be the road measurement, roadway services, which is maintenance and repairs, street sweeping, all of those all fall under the roadway silo. Sidewalks, the sidewalks follow the roads also, so same situation there. That's one of those that could fall under public works, because everybody uses the sidewalks. So that's another thing that we need to discuss when we get on down the road. Public safety services, which is the sheriff's office. Actually, that's another one that could be under public works. Because right now on roadways, I mean, to me,
Yeah, what's that got to do with trip generation?
bingo. And again, I just did it because it was on the roads, but you are correct. This is just an example of how we would do that. Other fees and charges, professional fees, that's all admin, so we would fall under that category. Continue on down. Public financing services, there was nothing there. That was, so you understand, that's what we did for the general fund one. That's how we measure them, that's how we put them into the silos. The next one is general fund number 2, which is Pelican Preserve. And here we did this, I did the same thing where if you go on up, did I have anything in roadways? Because we didn't really have a roadway. When I got the delineation, it was administration, water management, and then the HOA agreement. Those were the 3 line items
We had water and then HOAs. Yeah, roads is new.
I'm sorry,
Roadways is new.
did I put roadways in there?
You have it here.
Yeah, but is there anything in it?
There is in the 24 budget for 25 budget.
It's all lumped under admin, I think.
Should be under safety and security.
Yeah, well, when I had this budget, again, it wasn't separated. But what I want everybody to understand, we have the opportunity now, that's why we're going to be doing these workshops, to be able to make those delineations and determine.
So what you're telling us now is this is how you did it in the past?
Correct.
For the last methodology?
Correct.
These are the silos or the columns that you used, and this is how you separated it last time?
Correct.
Okay,
And that's going to change, of course.
yes.
But I just want everybody to understand what the thinking was. But that's why we're having, again, the workshops, because there may be something, a nuance that I'm not aware of that you're aware of that we can do. So,
One nuance that could be, that was complicating this last year on the PP side, was this HOA inside outside. Why wouldn't it be simpler to take and have account 00007? That's a good one. James Bond account, and that would be PP outside, and treat it like we do Stony Brook on theirs, not Fairway Lakes Office Park, Town Lake.
Town Lake.
Town
Town
Lake
Center.
Office Park.
Yeah.
And treat it like that. And because those people have essentially nothing to do with nothing, other than the fact they're in the district.
And you're talking about just PPAC outside?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so in other words, you'd have the commercial, and you'd have C5, and you would have the one vacant piece of
Parcel.
property. And those stand on their own. Now, because they might have shared cost, whether it be landscaping, signage, I can't think of anything else, with Pelican Preserve, then that, a shared component of their cost goes over to them.
that is true.
And it seems to me that'd make that a lot simpler than trying to come up with ratios like we did last time, which was very, very subjective.
If you notice, I left the inside and outside blank.
I saw
For that
that. I was
reason.
hoping that's maybe what you were doing.
That's where we were kind of going with it.
And give us more transparency to that
Well,
too. Or-
Absolutely. And I think, that's one of those things, does that group outside, the C5 and the commercial, do they fall in the general gateway? I mean, everybody gets some sort of benefit from the overall district.
Correct.
That's going to be our ultimate determination of what is that measurement and how do we do that. That's the first thing. So They
Well-
could fall,
Well,
they,
why don't we let Russ finish his presentation?
no, that's okay.
About
I-
last time before we jump into how we're gonna do it this next time.
no, but but is it appropriate at this time? Because I'm doing the G2. But I mean, there's ways we can do that. That is correct. And how we're going to think about that. And that's, again, why we did the future workshops, which is a good thing. Same thing here, water management and administration. I think in reality, we need to take a harder look at the administration. If the roadways are in there, we need to separate that cost. So we're going to have to get into the budgets and figure out how do we determine that. So you go on down, it's all basically follows the same principles that we had at Gateway, with the exception we didn't have the roadways broken out. So that's Pelican Reserve. And then the other three are pretty straightforward, G4, G5, GF4, GF5, GF6. They're all Stony Brook and is it Town
Lake.
Town
They
Lake?
just get assessed for everything.
Yeah, yeah, and then there, because it was inside, we split them equally among everybody, which still falls within the benefit determination with what they were doing. But anyway, so those can stay. We'll need to talk about that a little bit, depending on what it is they have inside versus what is going to be outside. Going forward, I just wanted you to understand, that's the first part, is really have to take a look hard at the budget. And then we'll do the benefit measurement. Some of those are pretty straightforward. Roadway is pretty straightforward. The water management is pretty straightforward. Administrative is pretty straightforward. The Parks and Rec will be one we need to talk about. How do we measure that? And I'm doing some research already on other places where they're doing. I've only found one so far, and I didn't think it was really applicable. But I just wanted you to know we're looking at that because that's going to be an important one. So
What about landscaping
where?
in Pelican? Because you said you determined landscaping for Gateway because the landscaping was basically on the roads.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are not only the roads that are landscaped in Pelican, but also the residential communities too.
But the residential communities themselves, isn't that taken care of by the HOA or the CDD?
Except that now we have easements with some of them that where we were doing it in the past and had been doing it in the past, we are now continuing doing it under an easement agreement with that HOA.
So the CDD is maintaining it.
Yes.
Is that?
So
It
how
is
do
But
you-
along the
only
road.
again on the main district roads, not in communities.
Carol's in.
Oh.
And is there, and Bob, is there any,
Let's get ready
are there
to
any
order
additional
people to do it.
common areas?
We have some, but they're no longer CDD.
Their HOA?
They're HOA
Okay.
or the community association. But everything we have historically done for the past 20 years, we now have correct grants of easement to maintain. Nothing new was taken on. A couple things dropped off. But we've taken the mess we got from WCI as far as who was responsible. WCI did it, and now we have incorporated that into our landscape agreement. But to Carol's point, there's a lot of other communities. This doesn't affect them as an individual community.
Correct.
Tree line would be the thing that we would have to look at.
Yeah,
From a
the one side
landscaping
of tree line,
perspective,
yeah.
on the
You
outside
always,
of
you
the gate.
always have the opportunity that if you had a community or a district that was huge with a lot of common area
Mhm.
that was not associated with the road,
Mhm.
you could very easily have landscaping that would fall under two components, that associated with road, that associated with non-road areas.
Well, we
So
have,
you can do it
we have an
either way.
island for
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
just discussion.
But it's not, I just want to make sure it's not,
There's an island that's almost the size of a small park. And
So it's not that complicated.
we thought it was part of the district because everything that's in the roads was ours, but somehow in their wisdom, WCI made that community association. So we went to the community association and we said, okay, we've always taken care of it. We will continue if you want, and this is what we'll do. And they evaluated and said, no, it's more trouble than it's worth. They'll keep it. So we deleted it.
Now, in a case like that, Bob, where you were talking about, or Mr. Gephardt.
Yeah.
In the
Bob's
case.
good.
Okay. I've known you guys a long time.
He won't answer to the other.
Died.
The, where you have the common area ones that the CDD is taking care of and they're not on the road, then it could fall into a public works type category like Ed was
Yeah, we
talking
don't
about.
have any of those in
Okay,
Pelican.
but we need to take a hard look at the budget. There are a lot of things that you may have a different measurement on. And you know, like this, the landscaping that goes along the roads in Pelican Preserve. Now, that would fall in the roadway part of the budget. However, and I know some of you have heard, but I have found one where there is a one trip generation for over 55 gated communities. So everybody gets that within that category. So you'd be splitting basically the roadways and everything equally, is how that works, because it's all the same trip generation, with the exception of the golf course, because the golf course generates different trips.
What
So
about single family versus multifamily?
they're the same.
They're the same
Yes, sir.
for trip generation on over 55?
Yes, sir.
That's odd. The issue you didn't talk about, maybe you're going to hit, we have the problem with the enterprise fund. The enterprise fund only has participation on the 001 related costs, but that is right at the top where it's divvied out and their costs go their way into the rate analysis. What's left then factors down. Is that correct? We're still doing that.
We're still doing it, but we're doing we're remeasuring, is that correct? We're going through and truly what it's going
Yeah,
to be.
I understand that, but I mean, but it only impacts the costs that you've done in 2024, the cost in 2025 that are only subjected to the enterprise share
Right,
are the ones in the 001.
right.
Okay.
So part of the exercise is one, reviewing the budget, preparing it, but also the verifying the classification of the categories, making
Correct.
sure that they're aligned correctly. Okay.
Yeah, and
So
Doug,
you're saying that the first step now is going to be to take the 25 budget, which we've adopted, and go through and each line item gets put into a silo, as you call it, or a
Correct.
column.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
And so who's going to do that?
Well, we're all going to do it.
Okay,
If that's, what I will do is I
so
will,
at the next,
at the next meeting, what I will do is I will come with that budget in particular, and I will put them in the silos the way I have seen them, and then we will discuss them. And if we need to move, we move them. I mean, that's, you know, I'll do the best I can. The one I really need to take a hard look at, gateways is, 01 is pretty easy. 02 is what we need to take a look at.
right.
Yeah, and by comparative purposes, the landscaping and roadway for Gateway comprises, how many roads?
Griffin gave a lot.
3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles, something? And the same thing in Pelican is like 16 or 18 miles.
Mhm.
So the order of magnitude is significantly different between the two entities.
I understand that.
Okay.
That's what, again, the next step is for me, I just want to let you know where I'm at. And then the next step will be to go through that process of looking, because that's important. Then we can talk about how we're going to measure it. Like I said, most of that's going to be pretty easy, except for the Parks and Rec and those kind of things.
Now, is the determination of those measurements, you have a dwelling here, so you receive a benefit.
Mhm.
Is that benefit the same for everybody, or are there graduations of benefit?
There's graduations of benefit depending on what we're measuring. Administrative, everybody benefits equally. Because the administration, everybody's here, it's equal. There's no, you know, but roads we do by trip generation. And water management, I measure each
Impervious surface lot.
property. What happens, I download the data from Lee County, and in there I have both the pervious and the impervious, and I also take a look at, in that data, they have 1 story, 2 story. And then I eliminate the second story off of that, because you can't, then you're double counting.
Don't
Right.
double
I mean, that's how the.
It's not by basal square footage.
Correct.
It's a basal.
Well, because when you get the building, let's say building square footage, that includes the second story. So if I see that, I'll go in and they have the little individual property cards, and I know how much is on that second story, I take that off. That's the detail that we go into.
Okay, well, I'm thinking in terms of, we have a pool
Mhm.
over here. If I live 1 community away from the pool, that's a benefit, it's real close. If I'm in C5, 10 miles away,
But
are they the same?
that, we haven't got into that yet.
Okay, that's what I make sure that,
I totally understand
Okay.
that. I've been living with
I'm
this
merely
methodology
asking the
for
question.
4 years, and I understand the detail.
Is there a
of it.
benefit? Yeah, there's a benefit, but,
There is a benefit, but and what order of magnitude
okay.
is what we.
So there is a graduated scale, and that's really all I was looking for.
Could
be.
But it could be.
Could be.
But he said one thing that was a little bit different that I wasn't aware of, that on your deal, on trip generation, if they're going by the over 55, you
We
will
have
not have a,
those, yes.
you will not have a differential between single family and multifamily.
Correct.
Whereas we have, if we go by trip generation, we have a single family and then you get a factored multifamily.
Correct.
So it's a little bit
And
different.
apartments are different, commercials different.
Yeah.
They're all different, but the.
But that won't be new for us, because that's been that way for us. We've been
You
55.
haven't-
No.
But you haven't had the roadway category.
You haven't had the roadway categories been blended into
But-
admin.
Well-
But
That's the
theoretically,
problem.
well, it's
We
kind of
did, we did.
theoretical.
We
because
didn't call it, but we did it.
It was in administration, right?
It was in
It was there.
admin. Yeah.
And so consequently, administration was pretty much across the board for you that way, equally. So it's just, you're just moving it into another silo,
Silo.
but it's still going to be measured basically the same. So, so that's, the other thing I wanted to talk about today, I actually had a couple of things, and then I'll open it up for questions or whatever comments. First of all, I was going to go through the current methodology, but really that's kind of an exercise in futility because we just did it basically, because I went through the general fund and how we categorize them. And as you know, we Pelican Reserve, Gateway is pretty straightforward. We have roadways, water management administration, Stony Brook Fund, all of those three funds. Then at Pelican Reserve, we had water management administration, and we had the HOA agreement, which was inside the gate, outside the gate. And we're going to be revisiting that. And when we originally did the original methodology, the basis of it was in the general fund one, was that, which is really the basis of most of my methodologies. It's the roadway, the water management, and then when we got to Pelican Reserve, it was a different animal. And what I did was I followed the bonds that were issued in 2002, 2004, somewhere, that methodology. That's where they had inside the gate and outside the gate. That's where that differentiation came, because that's the way the bonds were issued. So it already had proven a benefit in terms of
That was the capital methodology.
That was the capital methodology, correct. And so we followed that to some degree. I mean, I still had, the water management was different, the way I measured it, all of those things. But the inside the gate, outside the gate was driven by the bond. And that's how we got that determination originally. Now, there are some things over there that we really need to take a look at. And for instance, I'll use the Winn-Dixie parcel on the west side of Tree Line and Colonial, that intersection. It's, from what I've heard, the water management doesn't actually flow backwards. It goes out to Colonial, where on the east side, it flows back into the water management
That is
system.
correct.
So I'm going to need to get the engineer to quantify that for us, so I have it as a basis for how we measure that, how we determine that. So there are little nuances that I've learned along the way, as we all have learned along the way, that we're going to incorporate into the new methodology. So just wanted you to be aware of that.
Does all of the outside, I believe it does, but does all of Tree Line outside of, so all of Gateway outside of Pelican along Tree Line flow to the north into that Basin 6?
No.
Does any of that water go south? I didn't
From
think
the
it did.
town center to Winn-Dixie, it all goes towards Colonial Boulevard, north.
From Town Center,
From the town center,
okay, what about?
everything.
C5?
C5 is part of that. That's Basin 6. Everything else is going south.
Okay, so is there any billable unit, because the one south of C5 is wetland, that's conservation
And
area.
the,
So that
fire
wouldn't have any,
department and
that
all.
wouldn't have, yeah, fire department, that doesn't have any impact. So there's really no billing unit outside of Pelican Preserve that would have a cost basis in the stormwater management system other than Basin 6.
No.
No.
We should have. We don't. We should, because Colonial Country Club is contributing to us.
So outside of our-
And in the northern, or the southern portion, we have Botanical Lakes, yeah, they are contributing, and they pay nothing towards the water that they're giving us.
Correct. They're outside of our
So
district.
that
boundaries.
is, that is an opportunity.
But Yeah, I tried that one a couple of years ago.
I remember us going through that.
I remember getting shot down on
Wait, can
that.
we go east then? Can we go to Timber Creek?
Yeah, but my point was, is the billing units that are outside Pelican Reserve, for all practical purposes on stormwater management, are purely associated with Basin 6.
When we did,
Well, you only got one unit, that's C5.
well, when we did the
Well,
analysis,
commercials.
And
On the
commercial, yeah,
commercials,
yes.
when we did the analysis on C5, isn't that lake connected back into Pelican? for
Now
some-
it is,
Okay,
and they are contributing,
correct,
but the lake wasn't there until they built it.
correct. So now, and that's right, but even before that, even though you weren't connected back in, we treated that as a blank piece of land. And,
You say the
know,
lake in C5 comes back across the highway?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it comes into the basin.
Comes into
head.
us.
exactly.
It's
Okay,
always
that's
been
what I
part
was,
of
okay, that's what I was asking earlier.
It's
I
part of
thought-
6, and it comes in
Okay.
through our pond.
So then they do have a portion of outside that does flow into the
Well,
basin.
not only there, but also from Winn-Dixie. I'm not Winn-Dixie.
The other side.
The other side.
Yeah, the east side.
Oh, we know that.
The Goodwill side goes in the pond too, which is part of our basin. And then
Right.
all of it goes behind Winn-Dixie.
Well, and that's
So-
why Russ was saying
So it's not
earlier,
as simple as I was going to make it.
It's
we're
not
gonna
as simple.
engage Tetra Tech to review plans, as-built, et cetera, to
Yeah.
help assist Russ.
That's just
in
a
that.
math calculation. That's not that hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just determining who's benefiting
We've never
from the
bothered to get
system.
into that down nitty gritty.
Well, we did with C5, remember? I mean, we
Well,
started
that's
that.
recent. That's the last episode. Prior to that, we didn't.
No.
There wasn't anything there.
No, other than they.
Well, it's time then.
Yeah,
It's time we get into it.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
well, of course, I mean, we have the opportunity now to do it. Now's the time to really do it. That's why we're doing this. And really, that's all I had from the prior methodology, but in the revised methodology, again, we're going to determine the general benefits for all the properties, roadways, water management, parks and rec, administration, public works, if we determine that we're going to add another category. If we something else as we're doing the analysis and looking at the entire district, we might find even another category. But I try and keep them as minimal amount of categories as possible, because it makes it easier for measurement. And what you will see is, when you see the workbook, Infomark or whoever's doing your accounting at the time has I have a page there that has the budgets. It's GF01, GF2, and that, they all flow into the columns. So when they plug in the budget, it automatically lines them up into the columns that we have, the silos. So it's easier for them when they plug in the budget. Then we have a separate page where we plug in the individual. We know how much is water management, how much is roadways, and that all flows through. So basically, all they will be doing is plugging in the budget, and then plugging in, once you plug in the budget, and we have the silo categories, is the next page, which where you plug in the next worksheet, where you plug in the actual water management roadway, and that will all flow through the workbook and come out on the assessment roll at the back end. And then we can set up a separate page outside of that, so that when you're looking at your budget, you'll be able to, remember how you always have these tables that says single family is going to be this, multifamily is going to be that? Those tables will be set up as well. So we don't have to go through and try and recreate them all the time.
Yeah, when I'm looking at your silos that we're proposing or that we think we're going to follow, I guess this is a question more for Laura. For an administrative cost for whatever the silo is, will there be a head count number for that?
We're talking about that, right? As of the current methodology, we do the percentages every year. We talked about internally, the enterprise fund really is, it's fully funded out of enterprise, but then does the rest of the staff all just go into the general fund and everybody pays a proportionate share? Or do we continue every year tracking our time, doing a percentage, changing that every year? So we'll be discussing that as part of the
Yeah, because
administrative.
Now that we've got it down to the level proposed that we're going to do, I got administration for a park, I got administration for landscaping, I got administration. I'd like, do those number of administrators match our roles? Or is this tied into one community pays 7%, another pays 13%, another pays 14%?
Well, I mean,
So trying to get where I can balance this out.
when I look at this, when I talk head count, I equate it to hours. Now, again, when you've got salary employees, you still base it on 40 hours,
Right.
knowing that they're probably putting in 60. And then that head count equals X amount of hours. So if I've got X amount of work that needs to be done, you back in the number of hours, and then that gives you your head count. And that's really only way to quantify
As
it.
long as when that's done, it only
But-
totals what we have.
But what you should be able to equate is allocated hours versus head count. So if you've got someone at
Correct.
50%, they're allocated 20 hours a week, whatever. So it should be interchangeable. So whichever method we do, if it's head count versus hours, we still should be able to back into the hours.
Well,
That-
and
that
that's what
makes
I'm
sense.
hoping to get.
So you know how many hours are allocated, so you can, if I'm Pelican and I'm projecting the amount of work that needs to be done, this is how many anticipated estimated hours that need to be, that would equate one head count and a half, or half a head count.
And the thing I'm trying to avoid, Doug, is to have another surprise at our first budget meeting, where in this particular case, the Pelican headcount hours, in some cases, we're up 200%, some 150, all up 100.
From the previous
So
year,
from,
Mine stayed the same.
from 24
well,
to
okay,
25.
one person, all right, out of 26, stayed at 15%, and always said, but I should have charged more. But anyway, I just want to, I want to get to the point where it accurately reflects. And the reason isn't not to worry about paying, although that is a reason. The other part of it is Pelican is going through certain efficiencies to improve that in this year. Okay, we're cut our meetings in half. So I hope at the end of the year that will be reflected in this. Now, the
Right.
one way I know of doing it is with attorneys, the way attorneys bill hours, and that's one way. I'm sure there's multiple. I don't know. But I want to make sure it reflects what's really being used. Everybody should be willing to pay for what they do, whatever that is. And I think Pelican is willing to pay. But I want to make sure, I want to have certainty that I'm getting what I paid for. And the other part of it is I don't want to look at this thing at the end and come up with 65 people when we only got 35. You know, and you total up all the hours of all these little nitty gritty pieces. It ought to reflect, as you said,
Yeah.
the reality.
Well, that directly reflects the conversation we had for the previous 2 days around the staffing plan.
All of it.
And you have to understand the resources in order to back into your head count, and how do you plan accordingly. And
You know, in all honesty, this has been a loosey-goosey process for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was certainly a part of it. In the past, when Stony Brook said, oh, we're paying 18%, it only should be 15, we all looked at each other, 15's okay, and that's how we did it. Okay, we've changed now, and I understand.
yeah, we're trying to quantify.
Yes, we're trying to be more accurate.
Right.
Well, and
exactly.
staff was tracking for how many months last
From
fiscal year?
4,
4 months last fiscal, and we're
5.
tracking and tallying those hours.
Okay, we were getting
by
that for a
fund.
while.
Data
By
collection.
Are
Data
every
collection.
Wednesday.
Yes, we're still doing that.
I get that every Wednesday?
Yes, you do. It goes to your board
Oh, don't send it there.
email. We're actually gonna put it in the template is set up. I'll just do it.
Anything they don't want me to see, they send there. Okay,
It's also on the SharePoint site.
that's another mystery. Okay. You're dealing with old people.
So
Russ-
Russ, we've got about 18 minutes left.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're trying to gather from today's meeting with the board?
Not really. I think we'll get into the nitty gritty as we do these workshops. We have, could you put the calendar up on me?
One second, just
Yeah, go
before you
ahead.
leave this. Can you scroll back up just
Go
really
back up
quick?
again, I'm sorry.
So, just to summarize, first thing we do is we determine benefit.
Mhm.
Second.
First,
is
we
that- then
determine the budget,
And second, we quantify that benefit.
correct.
And
Oh, yeah,
third, then we calculate that amount to a percentage that we apply to the assessment.
The graduation, is that what you called it earlier?
Yeah. So that's what we do. We identify the benefit, quantify it, and then we come up with a percentage that will be applied to the assessment methodology.
Yeah, it's not so much a percentage, it's really, to be honest with you, I'm calculating 7,500 assessments.
Yeah.
Because it's for each parcel.
Well, the
However,
impact, the impact. of
The impact,
assessment.
yeah, so, but in terms of the benefit itself, and for simplistic purposes that we have done for staff and trying to administer the whole thing, is we moved them into neighborhoods like we did before. And I mean, that's still, you know, what I do is I'll take, like, all of Mahogany Run has the same water management assessment, because I used all of their assessments and determined it at that point. So that's how it will do, because they would have one total, another one have another total, anyone of Stony Brook would have a total in terms of water management, and then they all come in, then the percentage of that, and the water management acres that are determined, then they get the benefit, it's $2 million for water management.
So Mahogany Run could be different than Daniels Preserve
No,
in some way.
no. He's,
Well, wait a minute,
He
then
is-
why do we do the neighborhoods?
he's doing the percentages to get the total to be able to do the other ones that are not single family.
Then it gets
That all
allocated.
single family and
Right.
multifamily are lumped as one. So a house that's got 10,000 square feet versus a house that's got 2,000 square feet, they're the same.
Right.
They're the same. We
then
aren't
we're
getting, in other words, we aren't getting in to 7,500 different
Assessments.
calculation
No,
assessments.
but I thought within a community, it might be different.
No.
Mahogany Run might be very, if it's all condos, I don't know what they are.
Yeah, no.
If it was all.
House is a house.
Yeah, it's all single family and you have a single
Okay, if
family, you
all
have a
single families are
multifamily.
the same, I'm okay with that.
That's it. And all multifamily are the same.
And then multifamily homes, where there's 24 dwellings in a building versus 4 in a carriage house, they have their own way of,
Well, it would be determined on a unit. So if somebody has 24 and somebody has 48 units, so they would get, their allocation would be twice as much as this one, but each unit would be the same.
okay, I'll wait. I'll see.
And that's the same for duplexes also?
Duplexes.
How do you do
know,
duplexes?
It's interesting because duplexes, one of the determinations that I have to go through is when I look at the property appraiser, and they put DOR codes in there. Sometimes it's a 1, sometimes it's a 4. If it's a 1, then the duplexes would still be 2 single families. If it's a condo where you have that, then and it's a 4, then I have to determine it as a 4. So I rely on the property appraiser data and their determination of their Department of Regulation classifications.
Okay, so in Pelican Preserve, I live on Avila Circle.
Mhm.
I'm a single family, not connected residence,
Mhm.
but we're all titled as condos. How do you do that?
It would depend on what the DOR classification is. If it's 1, you're a single family. If it's a 4, you're a condominium. Or multifamily.
You're not basing it based upon
The product
title,
built,
It's based upon the use.
correct.
On
And
the
that's
It's not the form of ownership, it's the use.
correct.
So
And
who
that's-
determines if it's a 1 or a 4?
That's the property appraiser.
So the county property appraiser.
So your association's either other
So if I
718 or
look up
720.
my address on
Property
the appraiser's
appraiser,
website,
it'll tell you if
put
it's a
my
1 or
PIN
a
number in, it should have there what I'm appraised at,
how you're, yeah. How
a
you're,
1 or a 4 or whatever.
yeah, well, they give you just the classification. You're
Okay.
appraised based on the value, so.
With 13
Yeah.
minutes to go, do we want to go around and just ask Russ any questions? Carol,
Wait.
you want to start? Do you have
Well,
any questions?
Can we go over the timeline real quick?
Let me go to the timeline real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then we can do that, that's fine.
Okay.
Just so you
Let's
know,
go to the-
what we've scheduled, we've already had a couple of meetings where we have talked, and we have today's workshop. And then, oh, there you go. On November the 7th will be our water management workshop. And at that time, first of all, we'll talk about the budget at that time as well. Because the water management is not going to be hard to talk about. We know basically how we're doing it. I will
Tetra
just go
Tech's ready
through-
for this.
I'm sorry,
Tetra Tech's ready for this?
For
They'll have
which
their
one?
data?
for the water management?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean
For
in
your-
terms of,
Calculations on all these break aparts, they'll have all that?
you mean in terms of where they're flowing to and that sort
Yeah.
of thing? That, they probably won't have that for that meeting. Well, maybe they will. I don't know.
Okay, I just want to make sure because they're part of this, that they're going to calculate that.
No, I know. I understand that. But we're not getting into the calculations yet. We just need to determine where are they flowing. When we get into the calculations, then I'll know how to.
That'll determine the number.
Correct.
Okay.
And then on the 21st, we're going to do a roadways workshop, and December the 5th, the Parks and Rec and Administration part we're going to talk about. And then on December the 5th, or December the 12th and 19th, I have reserved those two for backup workshops if we need. Because at that point, I should be out well on my way and running and starting to do the manipulation of the numbers.
Crunching.
Yeah, start getting the workbook together, if you will. January 16th would be the first draft of the methodology to the board. It's not the final draft, or the final one. It will be the first draft. February 13th is when we place the public hearing. After we do the first draft, I'll have about another month or so to do the final draft of the methodology. I'll come back with all of the changes that we talk about, if there are any, or whatever the massaging that we need to do. And then on March the 20th, next year, we'll have the public hearing for the assessment methodology. And from that point on, then we can input budget and run with it. So we're trying to get ahead of the.
Yeah, and one other date that's not on there is when as we did last time, when you have your budget hearing, because you're changing the assessment methodology approach, you do another round of advertising with the tables and the charts and the individual notice like we did back in 2020. So you have two sets of public hearings basically on the assessment methodology.
Yeah, and I didn't have I have April and May and even June, but they're blank at the moment.
Yeah, in
so-
August, in July and August.
In July and
Last time,
August too, yes.
Now,
Yes,
But
but
to that point, this is in pencil right now. This is what we'd like to achieve.
correct.
But if the process dictates longer, then this slide still over the process is not.
Yeah, but,
That everyone is
but it's
comfortable.
really my goal to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay,
Because
and
we
mine
wanna
too.
make sure that
But
we
if it
hit the-
isn't done for the 26th fiscal year, it's not done. In
Yeah,
other
for
words,
the,
if
for
this-
next year's.
Yeah, this might end up in 27.
Well, that's why we have April as an open.
Totally understand.
Well, that-
These are not hard.
It
fixed
really makes
dates.
it complicated if we're not done because of the termination of Rule 6. That calculation really gets complicated with the system that we currently have.
You're back in the, yeah, you're
You
back.
got a
in the
very
old-
complicated system.
No different than this year.
Yeah, big difference. You didn't have it this year.
Well, we're not changing anything until we change it. So we're continuing to
That's-
operate under the Rule 6.
that-
No, Rule 6
I-
is out. That's gone.
That's out, but for this purpose, of the assessment purpose, we use what we have till we change it.
I understand, but that's why we need to get it changed because we don't have a system
It'll
to
be
to
changed
implement it.
eventually. We do have a system. We
Well,
got what we
so
got.
we have 10
We-
minutes.
we-
Well, Russ, my
Yeah.
concern about the schedule here is I don't see any what-ifs built in here. In other words, if we get to step 4 or 5 or whatever, and then we say, well, what if this was moved over here and this was moved over here? How does that change over here?
Mhm.
Because this time we want all the answers.
Oh, I understand.
Even the what-if answers, even the things that, because maybe landscape doesn't go with the streets, it goes with the ponds, because that's where we get the water from to, water the landscape and all that sort of stuff. I don't know, but my only concern with this, and I don't mind this as a starting point, we got to have a goal, so fine. And I'm willing to put in any extra hours and workshops that you want to put in here. But I also want the leeway. I don't want somebody to say, well, you should have mentioned that back in November 21st when we talked about X, Y, and Z. Well, sometimes things don't come to you when they're supposed to. Our minds aren't that orderly. So I want to explore all options that could possibly be out there and make sure we're making the best decision possible. And this is my only concern about the schedule you've put forward. I don't see what if time in there. What if this happened? What if you categorize this like this? What if you did this?
Mhm.
And I want to be able to ask those questions and I want to be able to get answers.
I totally understand what you're saying. We
Okay.
did build in, we have December, we have a couple backup workshops set there if we need them in December. January 16th is when I will come with the preliminary part. Then we have a month to make the adjustments. And what about this? What about that? What about this? And hopefully at that same time, you're taking that month and thinking about these different things. So when we come back in February, we can make those adjustments. Now, once I get the book formed, the master workbook formed, and we decide and we look at the budget, we say, well, maybe what happens if it goes over here? Well, here's what happens. We can show it at that point. So that's, we can play the what if at that point.
Okay.
And part of this, Carol, so we paired these with your typical meetings. If you choose to have a special meeting, we can always advertise and do that as a one-off. But for
Okay.
now, we just tried to partner these with the existing meetings that are already on the docket.
Yeah, and I treat this like what we do for budgeting. We go through each
Yeah.
GL, we go through each.
Except
you
we
know,
have
area.
hard stops for that. But yes, I
Yeah,
agree with
yeah.
you.
So we're baking in opportunity and getting in the weeds.
Yeah.
Right.
So the what ifs will come organically. In the workshops, they'll come organically through revisions. And I think what you're saying is we've got opportunities to plug in additional workshops or discussion
need to
time
do
or
that.
special
Well,
meetings.
Well, keep in
Okay.
mind too,
Yeah.
that for the
I mean, if it
001
goes to
side,
April, May, hey, I want to explore absolutely every option.
for the
Understand.
001 side, essentially with the separation of Public Works and
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec,
It's pretty much
it's
set.
going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
It's basically going to be exactly the same thing.
Right. It's all the periphery stuff that we're
It,
going to be going
it,
through.
it's mostly the 002 and the, what do you call it, outside area.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and we can push, for instance, I have water management as the next one. that may go entirely on the budget. If that's the case, we can move some of those because I have a full, like the roadways and the water management is pretty much determined on how we're going to do that.
Okay,
So there's some room in there if we go for a full hour on the budget, which we probably will, we can move the water management to the next one
yeah,
and push them on down the road.
okay.
And I still have a little bit of built-in time because this last one I finished at the end of March. Isn't that when we did that?
I think it was
Last-
April and then May.
Well, it was the end of March is when I finished my part.
Yeah.
I don't know, I
It-
started
Doug-
reading. it
Doug, do you have
still
anything?
working on it.
No, it looks like from our 7th, 21st, 5th, we're basically on utilities, public works, administration.
Bob, you got any questions for?
Well, yeah, because when we did it in the past, what you gave us is what we worked with.
Mhm.
And we'll be doing basically that this time. However, there is going to be an independent one done, or separate independent. And I hope they're both in lockstep and there's no variations of opinion or different opportunities to go different ways. And we may even have a third one by an interested outside party. So I want to make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that it's not, here it is, do it, and we're done.
Well, the one that's
There may
coming,
be.
the one that we're going to talk about later on is going to be basically a quality control or value engineering
It's called
of
peer
what Russ is
review
doing.
of-
That's
It's not
what
a,
you're saying.
it's not a
That's what-
totally
no.
separate report.
No, well, then you have a different view of that.
Yeah.
What it's going to be are the methodologies and the fundamentals of those methodologies both on the same track? Or are there differing approaches to hit? It's not, did he count one and one and get two?
No, I'm saying is that it's going to be a value engineering of the one he puts
You use
together.
whatever word you
It's-
want.
It's not
It'll
a,
be an independent
it's
and
not a
separate
totally
public-
different assessment methodology.
It may be, I don't know.
No, we're not paying for that.
We're not- Excuse me, I thought we already voted we did,
No.
but I
But
forgot.
anyway.
I forgot. It's
Anyway,
what you want.
it's-
Anyway, we're going to have a separate look.
I
And
understand
just-
that,
I
yeah.
understand.
And-
It's not a
and-
challenge to you in any way, shape, or form, but there may even be a third look.
But
So-
and I understand that, Bob, and what the situation is, it's always good to have another set of eyes on it, because that helps you review it, but that's what the peer review does.
Yeah.
I do peer reviews on other methodologies.
Yeah.
It's part of.
That's what I was trying to
it's
get to.
part of the
Peer review is a
situation.
better word.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're gonna look at it and say, well, did you think about this? Did you think about that? Or this is right, and maybe you need to think about that. That's-
So to Carol's point, those things may enter things we can't see right now,
And that's fine.
and we haven't seen.
And we can
That's all.
still make that adjustment. There's still a
Yeah.
little bit of time built in there to make those adjustments.
Very good. I just want to make sure everybody's in tune with it.
Anything else?
At the moment.
Okay, Flavia, anything? You lose her.
No, she's,
Only at the one year.
oh,
Okay. Okay, well then we'll plan on seeing you the 7th.
I will be here.
Okay,
The bell's on.
Do we want to ask, do you have any comment from the audience?
we
you're not
can't
allowed
do
public
that on the
comment at
workshop.
Do we want,
We can if we want to.
Be
I would like to
establishing
suggest,
establishing.
it's just, we've done it before. Is there anybody out there, that's a simple thing, would like to make a comment about this?
You're in charge.
You're in charge.
What's your desire? We're setting the precedents that we've never done before.
We have done it,
Mr.
Ed.
Attorney,
We can wait 2
It's up to the board's discretion.
okay, no.
well, we got
I
2
think,
minutes.
We
I
got 2
think we
minutes.
have
You
people
got 2
that
minutes.
are
A
interested.
lot of people came here
If
for an
anybody
hour.
wants to
And-
say their piece, I think they
I'm
should be
sorry.
allowed to.
Okay.
They took their
And
time.
then we'll delay the opening of the
No,
regular
we have
meeting
2
then?
minutes. We're not going to,
Or
We're
you
not
push
gonna
it
open
off
the-
to
we're not gonna
comment
delay
for
the meeting then?
regular
we have 2 minutes.
Why
If
don't
one
you
of
just
Nobody wants to
ask?
Just
Okay,
ask.
does anybody have a comment? Rod? Yeah.
You only get a minute and a half.
Rod, you can take 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks for my 2 minutes, Rod Senior, Gateway Greens. In an effort to educate myself on assessment methodology and to help if I can, I reached out to St. Lucie West CDD, which is pretty well like ours, same size, utilities heavy. Also the villages, who have got 19 CDDs. And your colleague Kevin Plentzer at PFM said hello. I got a 4-inch thick assessment methodology report from PFM that applies to all of the villages. Just out of interest, their golf courses, of which there are many, are all billed out monthly as an amenity fee through their HOAs. Trip generation is a big deal there that you've talked about because they've got a ton of roads. Landscaping and Parks and Rec are all bundled into one as a HOA, EAU single divider. because it's regarded as a general beautification and benefit for all. Like a rising tide, they say, it affects all our real estate values equally. For our district, Russ, trip generation, the way at least I see it, is not that significant because we've only got 6 minor roads. I can see why it would affect streetlights and stuff like that. Landscaping.
Rod, can you wrap it up?
Landscaping and Parks and Rec, I feel should be in Public Works and should be in straight EAU divided. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Anybody else? Otherwise, well, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll have the start of the regular meeting